Hello, this is Dr. Saldivar again. Today we're looking at Chapter 9 in the Feldman text, Essentials of Understanding Psychology. Chapter 9 deals with the topic of development, also known as human development, also known as developmental psychology. I don't want to cause confusion with these different terms, but they are used to describe the same subfield or the same area of psychology. So I want to make sure you understand that when we talk about development in a psychological context, we talk about development or human development or developmental psychology. We're talking about the same kind of stuff. Think of nature as the characteristics that you're born with, your body's instruction manual, and it's written and coded in your genes, your DNA. Some of these aspects of your instruction manual, your characteristics, include things that may run in your family: eye color, height. Some families have, it's common for them to have twins. Other families may have certain physical ailments or medical disorders that are common in that family for whatever reason that goes back to their nature, to their genetics, to their DNA. Nurture is everything that happens to you after you're born. All the experiences you have, all the stuff that happens to you in your life, things that you may not even be conscious of happening or think about how they affect you. But where you go to school, what experiences you have in school, the diet you have growing up, the food you eat as an adult versus a child, all of these things are going to have an impact on us as human beings. Scientists today have arrived at a consensus pretty much that both our genes or our nature, our heredity, and our environment or our nurture interact together to shape who we become. It's not a question of one or the other. Instead, both our nature and our nurture interact together to influence how we develop. Individual humans may, in some cases, have more nature that affects them. Others may have more nurture, depending on their own lives, their own situations. But for most of us, it's going to be a fairly complex interaction between nature and nurture that ends up determining who we are, how we grow and develop as human beings. This idea, then, human development or developmental psychology or development, is what we're looking at today. And human development, developmental psychology, however we want to refer to it, is all about this idea, this concept of how people change and grow and develop throughout their lifetimes. In developmental psychology, we often use the term lifespan also to refer to lifetime, the years that someone is alive. It's not just with development, it's not just about getting taller, getting older, although that's something that's easy to see, right? An individual, when they're an infant, clearly is of a different physical size, different height, different weight from who they are when they're 18 or 38 or 88. So those obvious physical differences are part of human development. But it's also about how our brain develops, how we learn or don't learn to handle emotions, how our intelligence develops over time, how we learn to be part of society, how we learn to interact with other humans. To use maybe an analogy some of you may find more helpful, it's like leveling up in a video game. That's the best way or easiest way to describe human development. Growing up is like a puzzle. As humans, there are four main pieces, four main areas that affect our development. The body, the mind, social skills, and our emotions. These pieces, these different aspects of who we are as humans, these different aspects of our development, develop and grow and change in different ways at different rates, influenced both by nature, by genes, as well as by nurture, by our environment. The body piece, the physical piece of development, is about our physical growth and change, the process of learning to walk when we're infants, the process of going through puberty when we're adolescents. Most humans, the typical period where we have the greatest impact of this growth and change component, not only, but primarily in infancy and teen years. Think of how much you grow and change physically from birth to about 18. Those 18 years, first 18 years of your life, you'll see a lot more change than you will the next 18 or the 18 after that or the 18 after that. Just because going from infant to 18-year-old, let's say, there's so much happening in that period that's related to physical growth and change. The mental piece of the puzzle of human development is cognition. Again, cognition just means how you think, how you learn, how you solve problems. Most of us will often feel like cognition is really most coming into play during our school years as adolescents, young children, and teenagers. But for others, certainly depending on your profession, your career, you may have cognitive demands on you the whole rest of your life. It just depends on your own situation. But nonetheless, your cognitive or mental development is another important part of how you grow and change as a human. The social piece of the puzzle of human development is about interacting with others, about navigating social situations, cultural situations, learning how to make friends, how to understand the rules of the society that you're part of, how to understand who you are as a person. What values do you want to have? What ethics do you want to have? How do you want to be perceived by others? And how do you want to treat others? And then finally, the emotional piece of human development involves recognizing and managing our feelings, trying to understand, not necessarily accept or give into, but have some awareness of others' feelings. Again, that's part of the social piece, right? Being able to deal with, live with, get along with other humans. Part of that involves understanding their emotions as well as our own. This is a big part of development that often comes, especially again in adolescence, and certainly through our adult lives. For example, understanding your own emotional state, understanding how to recognize others' emotional states is, just for one example, is a key part of developing good relationships, whether romantic, friendships, professional relationships in the workplace, or whatever. If you have trouble or don't care about, don't think about others' emotions, it can be difficult to get along with other people. And most of us will expect others to try and have some understanding of our own emotions too. So it goes both ways. All these pieces of the puzzle of development, the physical, the cognitive, the social, the emotional, all interact together into shaping us as humans as we develop and grow over time, and into making us who we are today. Now, the text will explain further, but human development is typically divided into different stages, each stage corresponding with a time period in our lives as human beings. And also, these stages are defined the way they are because there's typically some significant developmental milestones. There's significant stuff happening in our lives that usually kind of demarcates or divides up one period of our life from another. I'm not going to dwell on these too much. There's more details in the reading, but just to kind of illustrate the idea, infancy, which is from birth to about age 2 or 3, depending on the particular researcher, the particular psychologist might define that period. All these periods slightly differently. But as infants, our first 2 or 3 years of life, we're going through very, very rapid period of physical growth. We develop our motor skills. We start to develop the ability to use language. Childhood is roughly from age 3 or 4 through about 11 or 12. Our language skills expand. Our ability to think logically develops. We have more opportunities, more demands upon us in terms of social interaction, especially in a school setting. Adolescence starts about age 12 or 13 and then goes through our late teens, early 20s. This is the time period where, at least in most Western societies like the US, teenagers, adolescents go through a process of identity formation, learning who and what they are as individual human beings. Our abstract thinking develops much more in a more sophisticated way than it was certainly during childhood. We also begin a process of emotional maturation, hopefully, that will prepare us for adulthood. At that point, our intellectual development continues, but does begin to slow down a little bit. We typically, as adults, will begin to establish our career, finish our schooling. Many will start to develop a family life of their own, separate from the parents, the family that raised them. People will partner off and find romantic partners and perhaps have children, get married, other kinds of adult responsibilities that often come with that stage of life. And then in late adulthood, after we may have had families, had children, perhaps our children have grown up and left home and started their own independent lives, we as humans tend to begin reflecting on the lives we've led, thinking about our place in the world. What have we contributed? What have we not contributed? What regrets do we have? What stuff are we happy about? Certainly, physical changes come with getting older, and eventually we have to start coping with major changes as we get towards the end of life, retiring from work, the loss of loved ones as we get older. Sadly, just statistically, you're going to have friends, family, others in your life that are also getting older, and so the probability of people in your life getting elderly and passing away, or passing away from disease, illness, accident, that's part of life too. So we have to learn to be able to cope with those kinds of changes. But again, the takeaway is that it's hard to find sort of hard points in terms of stop-start during different periods of our lives as humans. We do tend to follow this pattern of having distinct stages where certain types of stuff is happening that informs and explains what the most important stuff is happening in our lives. An infant is going to have different important stuff, different concerns, different developmental milestones from a child. A child will have different developmental milestones from an adult, and so forth. Your development as a human is like a recipe. Your genes, we can think of as the ingredients, but your environment, your nurture, determines how those ingredients are prepared. I can make I can use the same ingredients to make different kinds of food, depending on how the ingredients are mixed together, how they're cooked. Same idea here. Even though we're born with our nature, with our heredity, our genetic code, our DNA, that may help describe or have certainly significant influence on things like our physical characteristics. Nonetheless, your family, the education you have, your cultural setting, your economic situation, all these things are going to have an effect on how you grow and develop over your life. Scientists who have studied how these factors interact, the nature and the nurture, do this because we want to try and understand how we can best support people's growth. If we understand how nature and nurture interact as well as we can, then we can try and develop ways of assisting people who may have particular challenges because of nature or nurture, or because of the interaction of the two. All this goes to the idea of helping human beings develop their full potential, which is a big part of psychology, especially this particular subfield we've been discussing in this chapter of human development or developmental psychology. Let's review the major ideas from this chapter. So again, scientists today believe that both our genes, our nature, and our environment or our nurture shape who we become. The two work together to develop to influence our development as human beings. The four main puzzle pieces or major aspects of human development are the physical, the cognitive, the social, and the emotional. We've discussed those. And then finally, human development we can characterize into different distinct stages, each stage corresponding with a different area of life. And these different areas or time periods of life are significant because they describe or they can be summarized by the major developmental milestones that are happening during a particular time period. Again, to repeat, infants from birth to age 2 or 3 are going to have very different developmental milestones, different stuff happening in their lives from a child. A child will have different stuff happening from an adolescent, a teenager, and so forth. All right, this concludes this presentation. I hope you found it helpful as you prepare to read this chapter. I'll see you in class. Good luck.